You're listening to Procurement 6, the weekly podcast from the team at Art of Procurement that summarizes this week in procurement in just 6 short segments.
Hi there, I'm Kelly Barner, and today is Friday, February 18th, 2022.
6.
Welcome to this week's Procurement 6. This week's Procurement 6 is proudly sponsored by Zip Intake to Procure. Zip is the world's leading intake-to-procure solution, one place for employees to initiate a purchase or vendor request. We're also delighted to be partnering with Zip on a research paper that covers the all-important topic of employee experience during the intake-to-procure process. Now their experience during the process often defines their perception on the role of procurement, as either a bureaucratic gatekeeper or an enabler of business strategy. So tell us what you think. Does employee experience really matter to procurement? Head on over to artofprocurement.com/experience survey to give us your thoughts.
5.
This week on the Art of Procurement podcast, we featured Tim Jones, formerly from Google and Epic Games, talking about putting experiential procurement into practice. In an honest and wide-ranging conversation with Philip Eidson, Tim talks about why procurement falls into a trap when it comes to creating a great experience, which includes getting stuck in the weeds of how the procurement sausage is made.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, thinking about the experiences that we create is about, mindset, and about thinking from the outside in and just designing, processes and interactions that are fit for purpose for the people trying to use them. The trap that I've seen as I, talk to other procurement professionals, or I've even seen creeping into companies that I've worked in, is that we get tangled up in being inwardly focused and become obsessed by how the procurement sausage is made, whether that's what the savings calculation methodology is, or what templates we're using, or stage gates, or compliance metrics, or all this kind of stuff. When what we should be obsessed with is the experiences that we're creating for stakeholders, suppliers, and perhaps more importantly than ever, our team members.
While I've never personally tried procurement sausage, I appreciate Tim's honesty here. He doesn't point to others' inability to fully comprehend our unique value or blame bad data or an overwhelming number of suppliers. At the end of the day, we have to own the experience we create, whether we created it on purpose or not. That is the only way to take charge and fix it. You can catch Phil's full interview with Tim at artofprocurement.com/episode 448.
4.
A few weeks ago, we had Peter Smith and Mark Pereira on the podcast to talk about their book, Procurement with Purpose. Each co-author shared a step that listeners can take now to get started on their purpose-driven procurement journey. Peter Smith took a quick wins approach. Like any other procurement effort, demonstrating that procurement can have a quick win impact on diversity, waste, or emissions might just be enough to spark a much larger movement within the company and the supply chain. Now, Mark Pereira chose to be more extreme, and that's his word, in his recommendation. He suggested looking up science-based targets for your top 35 suppliers, and then getting a semi-permanent tattoo on the back of your hand so you don't forget them. Now, fortunately, he did allow a Post-it note substitution for anyone too squeamish for tattoos. You can find the rest of this podcast debrief, as well as a range of other short-form content, on the Art of Procurement homepage, as well as in a link directly at the bottom of this episode page.
This is Procurement 6 from Art of Procurement. To get notified every time an episode is published, go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe. 3.
This week, we also shared a recently updated buyer power score for metal cans via our partnership with Procurement IQ. The Buyer Power Score rates the balance of power between buyers and sellers for a particular spend category. And for this week's category, the scales are definitely not in the buyer's favor. The Buyer Power Score for metal cans is a clear buy later recommendation, predominantly driven by current market pricing for aluminum, steel, and labor. The price trend from 2019 to 2022 is up by 11%, a significant cost increase that is not expected to abate until next year. Now, while the buy later recommendation is justified, companies cannot always wait to source and buy specific products and materials. Procurement should engage in collaborative discussions with the business to determine whether substitute products, such as composite metal cans, plastic, or glass, are viable alternatives. If not, it may be possible to mitigate the overall cost impact to the company by carrying lower inventory, signing shorter-term contracts, and even delaying purchases as long as possible. Visit procurementiq.com for more information about this category and many others.
2.
And now for something completely different. An article from the January-February edition of the Harvard Business Review caught my attention. How to Sell Your Ideas Up the Chain of Command. Start by Understanding Your Manager by Ethan Burris, Director of the Center for Leadership and Ethics at the McCombs School of Business at the University of Texas at Austin. Burris starts by offering two interesting statistics. 70% of people are not comfortable raising issues with their boss, even when it is important. And 85% of employees withhold their ideas because they are afraid to speak up. We can talk about data democratization all day long, but if we don't have a corresponding democratization of ideas, we're not going to get very far. According to Burris, there are two keys to figuring out how and when to speak up. The first is having the confidence to speak up at all, and the second is knowing how to present your idea to get the best possible reception from your boss. Now, I'm not going to address confidence because that's a personal matter, but I would like to share some of his ideas around figuring out how to get your boss to receive the idea well. He suggests starting by trying to figure out if your boss is insecure. If he or she is, that may be a limiting factor, but it isn't insurmountable. Burris suggests connecting your idea to overall company goals. Now, I would add to that, you're probably better off making the suggestion one-on-one than in a team setting. You may be able to control their response a little bit better if they feel safe. Second, make sure your idea is very clear. The point here is that you're selling up, so think elevator pitch and get right to the point. Say, I think we should or shouldn't do this, and here are 2 or 3 simple reasons why. And then stop and let them ask questions before you go on and cloud your thoughts. Lastly, run the idea past some others first. Pick trusted colleagues. This is important. Pick colleagues that will give you straight, honest advice, but not steal your idea. Make it clear that you really want their feedback, not just a hug or a pat on the head. In the conclusion paragraph of the article, Burris writes, quote, "Despite the clear benefits, innovation rarely bubbles up from below at most organizations. However, blame for those missed opportunities doesn't always lie with management. To sell your ideas up the chain of command, think about the psychology behind managers' resistance and reframe your proposals in a way that makes you a more persuasive advocate for change." End quote. What suggestions would you add for managing up? Or have you tried this and been successful or not? Join the conversation on the Art of Procurement LinkedIn company page.
1.
Are you ready for AOP Digital Outcomes? It's a brand new digital conference from the Art of Procurement team that will take place between March 8th and the 10th, 2022. Each day, for 2 hours, we're going to be taking a different approach to discussing procurement transformation and focusing on what matters most, the outcomes that digital transformations deliver. Through the event, we'll focus on 3 key themes: driving strategy, increasing speed, and achieving scale. And we're delighted to announce that we have some fantastic speakers confirmed. On day 1, IBM's Melissa Drew will explore whether AI can elevate procurement's focus to a strategic level. While on day 2, McKinsey partner Johan Ronning will share his thoughts on whether disruption is procurement's digital destiny. And on our final day, Peakspan Capital's Jack Freeman will share why tech investment is going into scaling procurement outcomes through our suppliers. To make sure you don't miss out on all of this live content, register now. Just go to artofprocurement.com/calendar to find out more. You can also find all of the links associated with the stories and content mentioned today at the show notes page for this episode at artofprocurement.com/podcast.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next Friday at 6 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. If you've enjoyed this pod, help us grow and tell your peers to search for Procurement 6 wherever they get their podcasts.